I always thought the wedding night was supposed to feel like the closing of a circle, a seal placed over a lifetime of promises. Instead, I remember the cold sweat on my neck, the faint smell of roses dying in the hotel suite's vase, and the sound of my own pulse drumming in my ears. Clara was laughing when it started. Her laugh, the one I used to chase like sunlight when we were kids, when we'd run barefoot through the fields behind her parents' house. That laugh had always been my compass. And now it was guiding me into a trap. "Trust me, Danny," she whispered, her veil already tossed aside, her hands moving with playful urgency. "It's just a game. Something different. Something exciting." The champagne still fogged my head. I'd waited for this night, waited through years of silent patience, of being the one she returned to when others left. So I let her guide me. I let her press me back into the bed, silk sheets cool against my skin. I let her tie my wrists to the headboard with ribbons I thought were meant for decoration, not restraint. I didn't even question it at first. I smiled, a little nervous, but willing. "Clara," I said, my voice low, almost sheepish. Always full of surprises. She kissed me once, sharp and fleeting, like punctuation. Then she stood back. Something flickered in her eyes, a glint I'd never seen before. Not warmth, not love, something closer to hunger, but not for me. The door clicked open. I thought maybe it was room service, some late-night interruption. But no tray of champagne rolled in. No polite bellboy. Adrian Cole stepped into the room like he owned it. The same Adrian who had been her obsession in high school, the storm she swore she'd outgrown. Tall, smug, the kind of smile that said he'd never lost and never intended to. "Clara," he drawled, shutting the door behind him. "Couldn't wait, could you?" Every nerve in me froze. The ribbons dug into my wrists as I instinctively tried to move, tried to sit up. My chest tightened like someone had poured cement into my lungs. "Adrian?" My voice cracked against his name. "What the hell is this?" Clara didn't meet my eyes. She was radiant, flushed, alive in a way she hadn't been with me all day, not even when we exchanged vows. "It's okay, Danny," she said softly, almost tenderly, as if that gentleness could mask the knife. "You don't understand now, but you will. Adrian and I, we have unfinished business." I stared at her, the words like static in my ears. My wife, my childhood friend, the girl who once promised we'd always choose each other. And here she was, tying me down not out of love, but to clear a path for someone else. For him. The room tilted. The roses smelled rotten. The wedding ring on my hand felt like a shackle. I could barely hear myself when I whispered, "You married me, for this?" Neither of them answered. Adrian's grin widened. Clara looked away. Somewhere deep inside, past the shock, past the numbness. A small mechanical part of me kept working. A part that wasn't drowning. The phone I'd slipped under the pillow earlier, paranoia, instinct, I didn't know which, was recording. The tiny red light invisible in the shadows. If they were going to carve me open tonight, the world was going to see the blood. I let the silence stretch, the sound of them breathing, the ribbon fibers creaking with every futile pull of my wrists. My heart was breaking in slow motion, but my mind was already planning. Because if this was love's end, then it would also be their ruin. When I close my eyes, even now, I don't see Clara in the wedding dress or in that hotel room with Adrian. I see her barefoot in the dirt, hair tangled from running, laughing at something only she found funny. That's the Clara I grew up with, the one I carried in my chest like a secret shrine. We were inseparable back then. She was the spark, the dare, the girl who'd climb the tallest tree just to wave at me from the branches. I was the shadow at her heels, the boy who made sure she didn't fall, who held the flashlight when she swore she'd seen ghosts in the woods. She used to call me her anchor. I wore the word like a badge of honor. But anchors don't move. Anchors sink where they're dropped. Clara always wanted more. By the time we hit high school, her name was on everyone's lips, student council president, the lead in every school play, the kind of smile that made people rearrange themselves to stand closer to her. I was still there, holding her bag when she needed to run, listening to her rehearsed speeches at midnight. Loyal, quiet, invisible. And then Adrian Cole showed up. He wasn't from our neighborhood. He had that dangerous air, like he'd already lived 3 lives before 16. The first day he leaned against the lockers, guitar case slung over his shoulder, Clara noticed. Everyone did. But her eyes lingered longer. I saw it happen in real time, the shift. The way she leaned in when he spoke, the way her laugh stretched wider, sharper, when he was around. Adrian was everything I wasn't: reckless, magnetic, untouchable. He didn't love her the way I did, carefully, reverently. He devoured her. And she let him. They burned hot and fast, like fireworks. And like fireworks, they fell apart just as quickly. I was there for that too, for the nights she cried in my car, swearing she'd never let him back into her life, that I was the one she could truly count on. I believed her. God, I wanted to believe her. Looking back now, I see the red flags waving like bloody banners in the wind. The way her eyes still flickered when Adrian's name came up, even years after. The messages she swore were nothing when I caught glimpses of them on her phone. The way her hand would go cold in mine when we talked about the future. I told myself I was imagining it. That it was paranoia. That love was supposed to be patient, to overlook flaws, to forgive. On the night I proposed, I saw hesitation in her smile, a shadow darting across her face before she said yes. I buried it, smoothed it over with hope. Even the day of the wedding, Lucas pulled me aside, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "Danny," he said quietly, "are you sure she's in this with you? Really?" I brushed him off. I told him he didn't understand. That Clara and I had history, roots too deep to cut. But roots can rot. And sometimes, you don't notice until the tree collapses on top of you. Now, replaying those memories in my head, I wonder if I was ever her choice at all, or just the placeholder she needed while waiting for Adrian to circle back. And if that's true, then I've been living in someone else's story all along. The reception feels like a dream I was only half awake for, a blur of clinking glasses, laughter too loud to be genuine, and the constant pulse of music that never seemed to settle. People tell you your wedding day flies by, but they never mention how it feels when half of it drags like wet concrete against your skin. Clara looked perfect. I'll give her that. Her hair caught the light like spun gold, her dress fitting her like the world had been tailored around her. She smiled for the photographs, tilted her head just so, pressed her lips to mine when the crowd called for it. But when no one was watching, she went cold. Her hand, tucked in mine, felt like a mannequin's, shaped right but empty. She leaned toward me only when she had to, the way someone leans toward a fire for show, not warmth. I noticed the way her eyes kept drifting. Not to her parents, not to the dance floor, but to the far corner of the hall. Adrian. He had been invited because Clara insisted. It would be awkward not to, she said, her voice lined with that stubborn edge that always left me swallowing my protests. He had been, just a part of the past, she claimed. We're adults now, Daniel. Don't be so insecure. But there he was, leaning back in his chair, collar undone, the kind of arrogance that fills a room without needing words. And every so often, when the music slowed or laughter rose high enough to cover the silence, Clara's gaze found him. And he found hers. Those glances weren't accidents. They were conversations I wasn't invited to. Lucas caught it too. He always did. He had been my best man, my brother in all but blood, and the only one who could cut through the fog of celebration with a single look. At one point, while Clara disappeared to fix her makeup, Lucas pulled me aside near the bar. His tie was already loosened, his glass half empty. "Danny," he said quietly, his voice almost lost beneath the bass drum of the DJ, "tell me I'm not the only one seeing this." I tried to laugh it off, but it sounded brittle even to my own ears. "You're imagining things." Lucas shook his head slowly. "No. She's imagining things, but with him. You're just not letting yourself admit it." I swallowed, the champagne suddenly sharp in my throat. "It's our wedding day, Lucas. Don't start." His eyes softened, pity where I wanted reassurance. "I just don't want to see you get hurt, man. Not again." I brushed him off. I always brushed him off. That was my talent, pushing down the doubt until it festered into something worse. Later, during the first dance, Clara's body felt stiff in my arms. I tried to meet her eyes, but she was scanning the room, lips curved in a smile that never reached me. And there, beyond the crowd, Adrian raised his glass in a silent toast, his grin lazy, knowing. Clara didn't blush or look away. She held his gaze for a heartbeat longer than she should have. I told myself it was nothing. That she was just nervous, overwhelmed, distracted. But the truth was already there, crawling under my skin, whispering in my ear. And I ignored it, because admitting it then would have meant unraveling everything. I used to think memory softened with time. That details blurred, edges dulled, and the moments you wanted to forget eventually slipped away. But some memories stay sharp no matter how many times you try to file them down. The ceremony is one of them. I can still taste the air in that chapel, heavy with perfume and sweat, too sweet for breathing. Clara walked toward me, and the room disappeared. Or maybe I just forced it to. She looked radiant in white, veil trailing like a river behind her. Everyone sighed, everyone smiled, everyone whispered about how lucky I was. And I believed it. But when I replay it now, I see what I missed. Her steps faltered, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I knew her stride. She hesitated once, twice, as though each step toward me was a weight she didn't want to carry. Her smile, God, that smile everyone complimented, wasn't hers. It was something rehearsed, plastered on, the kind of smile you wear for photographs, not promises. When the officiant asked her to repeat the vows, her voice trembled. People thought it was nerves. I thought it was beautiful. But no, it was doubtful. Doubt pressing on her throat like hands she couldn't shake off. I said my vows with every piece of me laid bare. She said hers like she was reciting lines from a play she didn't want to be in. And then the kiss. I leaned in, heart pounding, ready for that electric confirmation, that moment when everything clicked into place. But her lips were cool, unyielding. She didn't melt into me the way she used to when we were teenagers, sneaking kisses behind the bleachers. She kissed me like it was a transaction, a contract sealed, a duty performed. I told myself I imagined it. I told myself the weight of the moment made her stiff, that she was overwhelmed. But deep down, the truth rattled against my ribs. Those vows weren't meant for me. They were a performance for everyone watching. For her parents, who adored me. For the friends who believed in our fairy tale. For herself, maybe, to prove she could choose stability. But not for me. Never for me. Now, in the hotel room's dark silence, the memory curdles. I see her standing at that altar while, in her heart, she was still tethered to Adrian. Every word she gave me was counterfeit, a promise she never intended to keep. And I, fool that I was, signed my life away on the strength of them. The shock that held me in place when I first saw Adrian walk into our wedding suite is gone now, replaced with something colder, sharper. A seed planted in the cracks of those vows. This isn't about forgiveness anymore. That was burned to ash the second Clara tied the ribbon around my wrists and turned her eyes toward him. No. This is about truth. Exposure. Making them both choke on the reality they thought they could bury. I feel the weight of my phone against the mattress where it's hidden, recording silently. Proof. My proof. They wanted me bound. But they're the ones who'll be trapped when I'm finished. The morning after should have been a hangover of happiness. That's what everyone expects. Bleary smiles, inside jokes, whispers about the honeymoon to come. Instead, it felt like I'd stepped onto a stage where the play had already been written and I was the only one who didn't know my lines. Clara was flawless. She floated through the dining hall at her parents' estate like a vision of wifely perfection. A white sundress instead of a gown, her hair loose, her smile soft enough to convince anyone watching that she was blissfully in love. She touched my arm when people looked, leaned her head on my shoulder when her mother snapped photos, and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Anyone else would have called it devotion. I knew it was a performance. I kept my hand in my pocket, fingers brushing against the phone. The recording sat inside it like a live grenade, humming with quiet power. Every time Clara giggled, every time she kissed my cheek for an audience, I thought about pressing play. Right there, right then. Letting her whole family hear what their darling daughter had done on her wedding night. But I didn't. Not yet. Adrian was there, of course. He always is. The old friend, invited by Clara with the same stubborn insistence that had gotten him a seat at our reception. He was across the table, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, leaning back like he was in his own living room. His glass of orange juice caught the sunlight, glowing as he raised it lazily in my direction. And then he looked at Clara. Always Clara. The bastard didn't even try to hide it. He winked once, subtle enough that her parents didn't notice, blatant enough that I did. Clara's lips twitched, not a smile, not exactly, but a recognition. A connection. She reached for her fork at that moment, brushing the back of her hand against mine in a gesture that was supposed to look intimate. To everyone else, it probably did. But I felt the emptiness in it. She wasn't touching me. She was covering herself. Lucas sat 2 seats down, watching. He hadn't said a word, but his jaw was tight, his eyes darting between Adrian and Clara like he wanted to flip the entire table. He caught my gaze once, held it, and I knew what he was thinking. Do something. Don't just sit there. I stayed still. On the outside, I played my role. I smiled when spoken to, nodded when Clara's father praised me for, finally bringing stability to her life, lifted my glass during toasts. But inside, I was fired. Every glance they shared, every laugh Clara offered at Adrian's quiet remarks, was kindling. The recording in my pocket was the match. I told myself to wait, to bide my time, to let them believe they had one. Because when I struck, it wouldn't be in private. It wouldn't be whispered or hidden. It would be public, brutal, irreversible. As Clara kissed my cheek again, her lips brushing my skin like ice, I made the decision, I wouldn't stay silent. No more doubts. No more excuses. The vows had been lies, the wedding night a trap, the brunch a masquerade. But the mask always cracks. And when it did, I'd make sure the whole world saw what lay underneath. The house was too quiet that night. Clara had fallen asleep early, or pretended to. She always did that when she wanted distance, lying on her side, back turned, her breathing exaggerated like an actress in a bad play. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, every nerve raw, every thought circling the same truth, I was married to a stranger. I got up eventually, slipping into the darkened living room. The glow from the streetlight leaked through the curtains, painting the carpet in pale stripes. I sat there in silence, phone in hand, replaying fragments of the recording from the wedding night. Not the whole thing, I couldn't bring myself to, but enough to remind me I wasn't dreaming. Enough to remind me why my chest hurt. That's when I heard it. A soft vibration. Not mine. Clara's phone left on the coffee table after she fell asleep. The screen lit up, Adrian. My stomach twisted. I shouldn't have answered. But I didn't need to. Clara's footsteps creaked on the stairs a second later. She padded into the room, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes sharp despite the act she put on for everyone else. She didn't notice me in the corner. She grabbed the phone, whispered, "Hey," and slipped out the back door. I followed, careful, the way I used to when we were kids sneaking through the woods. I opened the kitchen window just enough to hear her voice in the garden. "Adrian," she whispered, her tone soft, warm, the kind of warmth she never gave me. "I didn't think you'd call this late." His voice was faint, but clear enough, arrogant, smooth. "Couldn't sleep. Just kept thinking about you. About us." I gripped the windowsill until my knuckles ached. She laughed, low, breathless. "You shouldn't say that. Not now. You know people are watching. You think I care about them," he shot back. "Clara, you belong with me. You always have." There was a pause. I heard her breathing, uneven. Then, "I know. God, I know. But I had to. Daniel, he's safe. My parents love him. He gives me everything they think I need. Stability, respectability. That's why I said yes." The words landed like blows. Each syllable carved something out of me, hollowing me deeper than I thought I could go. "But you," her voice cracked. "Adrian, you own my heart. You always have. Even when I was standing there at the altar, saying vows to him, it was you I was thinking about." The window glass fogged under my breath. I wanted to storm outside, to scream, to shake her until the lies fell out of her mouth. But I didn't. I stayed in the shadows, listening, swallowing the acid burning up my throat. Because anger wasn't enough. Anger would make me reckless. What I needed was precision. She kept talking, confessing everything I already feared. That I was her shield, her mask, the man she chose because he fit the picture, not because he fit her. That Adrian was the flame she could never put out. When she finally whispered goodnight and slipped back inside, I was still frozen at the window. She kissed me lightly on the forehead before climbing back into bed, thinking I was asleep. My skin burned where her lips touched, like an insult branded into me. I lay there beside her, eyes open, every word replaying in my head. Stability. Respectability. A mask. No. I wasn't going to be her mask. I wasn't going to be the fool she paraded in front of her family while sneaking calls with Adrian in the dark. I had the recording. Now I had her words. The picture was coming together, frame by frame. And when it was complete, I wouldn't just walk away, I would pull her whole stage down with me. I waited until Clara's breathing settled into that fake rhythm she always used when she wanted me to think she was asleep. Then I slipped out of bed, phone in hand, and sat on the floor against the dresser. The carpet scratched through my thin shirt. My pulse was louder than the quiet hum of the room. For a long time, I just stared at the black screen, thumb hovering over the gallery icon. I wasn't sure if I had the strength to look. Part of me wanted to throw the phone against the wall, to destroy the proof and pretend it hadn't happened. Pretend she hadn't tied me down, hadn't looked at him with that hunger that used to be reserved for me. But another part, colder, sharper, needed to be seen. Needed to confront it frame by frame, to strip the betrayal of any illusions I'd been clinging to. I pressed play. The video filled the screen with the dim glow of the hotel room. My voice came first, nervous, almost sheepish, always full of surprises. Then Clara's laugh. Sweet to anyone else, venom to me now. I watched her tie the ribbons, her hands quick, and practiced. I had thought it was intimacy. Now it looked like entrapment. The door opened. Adrian stepped in. Even on the shaky recording, his smugness bled through, the tilt of his head, the curl of his smile. My own voice followed, breaking, "What the hell is this?" I couldn't keep watching, but I did. My eyes burned, my stomach clenched, my fists tightened around the phone until the case creaked. Every second was a blade carving humiliation deeper into me. Her words, "Adrian and I, we have unfinished business." His smirk. Her refusal to look at me. It should have broken me completely. Maybe for a moment, it did. I felt the shame sear through me, the raw humiliation of being tricked in front of no one and yet everyone, because I knew, eventually, this wasn't going to stay between the three of us. This was going to be their ruin. I paused the video. The frame froze on Clara's face. Not the face she showed her parents, not the face she gave me in public. No. This was her true face, lit with excitement, eyes alive, every line of her body angled toward Adrian. And for the first time since the wedding, I didn't just feel rage. I felt something close to freedom. Because the recording wasn't just proof of betrayal. It was proof that I wasn't crazy, that all the doubts and shadows I'd buried were real. It was the key out of the cage she had built around me. I replayed it again, slower this time, forcing myself to watch, to catalog every word, every look. Shame burned, but beneath it, a strange clarity grew. I wasn't her husband. I was her shield, her disguise, her stability. But with this in my hands, I could be her undoing. The phone screen dimmed as the video ended, my reflection staring back at me, tired eyes, clenched jaw, something unfamiliar in the set of my mouth. Not forgiveness. Not grief. Purpose. I stopped trying to hold her hand. That was the first change. Small enough she barely noticed, but to me it felt like stepping away from a cliff edge I'd been dangling over for years. Clara still played her part, floating through rooms with that same effortless grace, brushing my shoulder in front of her parents, kissing my cheek when neighbors stopped by to congratulate us. But when the doors closed, when it was just the two of us, silence settled like dust. I didn't chase her words anymore. I didn't ask how she was feeling, didn't offer comfort when she sighed into her pillow at night. I let the space grow, and she mistook it for sulking. "Daniel," she said once over dinner, her fork tapping against the plate. "You can't stay mad forever. Marriage isn't about keeping score." I almost laughed. Marriage isn't about keeping score. She had tied me up on our wedding night for another man, and here she was, lecturing me about pouting. Instead, I just nodded, pushing food around my plate. "I'm fine." She gave me a sharp look, eyes narrowing, then shrugged and turned her attention back to her phone. Adrian's name never lit the screen when I was near, but I knew. I could always tell by the way her lips curved, that faint smirk she couldn't hide. Lucas was the only one who saw through me. We met up at a small bar downtown a few nights later, the kind of place that smelled of old wood and cheap whiskey. He studied me over his glass, brow furrowed. "You're pulling away," he said. Finally. I sipped my drink, letting the burn settle in my chest. "You think it's too late?" He shook his head slowly. "Not too late to walk away. But it was too late to save her. She's gone, Danny. Whatever you thought you two had, it's not coming back." I nodded, staring into the amber liquid. "I don't want her back." That surprised him. His eyebrows rose, then dropped again as he studied me. "Then what do you want?" I leaned back, pulling the phone from my pocket, setting it on the table between us. I didn't play the recording, didn't need to. The weight of it was enough. "I want the truth to burn," I said quietly. "I want them both exposed. No hiding. No excuses. If she wants a stage, I'll give her one." Lucas let out a slow breath, rubbing a hand over his face. "Careful, man. Revenge feels good until it doesn't. Just, don't lose yourself in it." But I already knew. I'd been lost for years. Following Clara, orbiting her like she was the sun. Maybe this was the only way back to myself. Back at home, Clara slipped into bed beside me, resting her head on my chest as though nothing had changed. I didn't move. I didn't hold her. In the dark, she whispered, "You'll come around. You always do." Her certainty chilled me. She thought I was sulking, retreating until I inevitably folded, like always. But this wasn't sulking. This was silence sharpening into something lethal. I wasn't coming around. I was winding up. The plan began with a phone call. I heard the cheer in Clara's voice as she spoke to her mother, the perfect daughter arranging what she thought would be another chance to shine. "Yes, Mom, Sunday evening works. Daniel wants to host, can you believe that? He's really getting into this whole husband thing." Her laughter floated down the hall. I stood in the doorway, invisible, letting the lie wrap itself around her throat. She thought it was a celebration. She thought it was for her. In truth, it was the stage I was building. I spent the next few days rehearsing every detail in my mind. I bought extra wine, ordered her favorite catering so no suspicion would stir. I even let her pick the flowers for the dining table, white lilies, her favorite. She thought I was softening. She thought the sulking was ending. But while she arranged petals in a vase, I was testing cables and adapters. While she fussed over appetizers, I was tucking away the small projector and screen I had ordered online, hidden in the hall closet under coats. Every movement was a countdown. Lucas knew, of course. He was the only one I trusted with the truth. We sat in my car outside the electronics store, the projector box between us. "You're really going to do it," he said, not a question but a slow realization. "Yes," I answered. My voice was flat, colder than I expected. He stared at me for a long moment. "It's going to ruin her." "She ruined herself," I said. He didn't argue. By the weekend, the house was spotless, polished to a shine. Clara moved through it humming, mistaking my calm for devotion. "You'll thank me one day," she said as she pressed a kiss to my cheek, lipstick smearing faintly red. "This is the kind of marriage our families will admire." I smiled back, hollow, the kind of smile you wear before striking the match. On Sunday evening, the guests arrived, Clara's parents first, her mother glowing with pride, her father clasping my hand with a firm, approving squeeze. Then came the cousins, the aunts, the uncles. Laughter filled the rooms, glasses clinked, and Clara glided between them all like a queen hosting her coronation. And then, as if fate itself wanted to tighten the rope, Adrian walked in. Not invited, not expected, but welcomed by Clara with a warmth she didn't even try to mask. "He's an old friend," she said lightly, brushing off her mother's raised brow. I felt the pulse of the phone in my pocket, the video waiting like a blade. Adrian's smirk told me he thought this night belonged to him too. But no, this night was mine. After dinner, Clara clinked her glass, thanking everyone for their love and support, her voice ringing with practiced sweetness. She hinted at a surprise slideshow of honeymoon photos, turning toward me expectantly. "Daniel's been working on something special." I rose, calm as still water, and crossed the room to the closet. My fingers closed around the projector case. The screen, folded neat and white, rested against my leg. My heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. It was steady. Cold. Because I wasn't a groom anymore. I wasn't even a husband. I was an executioner. And the gallows were ready. The clinking of glasses sounded almost ceremonial. Crystal against crystal, laughter rolling like a tide, the warmth of family wrapping the room in a false comfort. Clara sat at the head of the table, radiant in her dress, ivory silk that still smelled faintly of our wedding day. Her smile was effortless, polished, the kind of smile that made parents beam with pride and cousins lean in with envy. She was glowing. Glowing because she believed she had everyone fooled. "To Daniel and Clara," her father said, raising his glass. "May their love be long, their home be happy, and their bond unbreakable." I lifted my own glass, the stem cold against my fingers. I met his eyes and held them a second too long, just enough for the first crack to form in my mask. The toast passed, laughter filled the air again, and Clara leaned against my shoulder as though she belonged there. Her perfume curled around me, sweet, intoxicating, familiar. For a moment, I almost believed it. Almost. But then Adrian laughed across the table, and reality snapped sharp. He was lounging with his glass half empty already, telling some story about his travels, his eyes flicking to Clara too often, his grin just a little too smug. I noticed the way Clara tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when his voice rose. I noticed the way her smile tightened when I caught her. Lucas sat 2 seats away, his gaze bouncing between us like he was watching a storm build in silence. He gave me the smallest nod, steady, patient. Dinner unfolded as though it were scripted. Plates cleared, new bottles opened, the air thick with the scent of roasted lamb and wine. Clara played her part beautifully, charming her mother, deflecting her father's probing questions about when they'd expect grandchildren. She touched my hand at all the right times, leaned in when she was supposed to. She was an actress, performing on a stage she thought she controlled. And I was her audience. Silent, waiting. "Daniel," her mother said warmly, "you've brought out the best in Clara. She looks so happy." I smiled faintly, my eyes on my untouched plate. "I'm glad she feels that way." The words slipped smooth, practiced, but inside they tasted like iron. Adrian chuckled softly, sipping his wine as though he knew something no one else did. Maybe he thought the night was his to win too, another conquest in a long line of them. Let him think about it. Let her believe she'd spun the perfect web. I let the warmth of the dinner wash over me without sinking in, a man already untethered. I was calm, detached, watching the play unfold before the curtain dropped. Because soon, very soon, the real performance would begin. The laughter around the table felt muffled, like I was listening through water. Glasses clinked, Clara leaned in with that carefully rehearsed smile, Adrian lounged as though he owned the air itself. And me, I was already standing in the shadows of what was about to come. I rose from my chair. The sound of it scraping against the floor cut through the noise, drawing eyes toward me. "Before dessert," I began, voice steady, "I'd like to say a few words." Clara beamed, mistaking the moment for sentiment. "Oh, Daniel," she said softly, like she thought she knew what was coming. I glanced at her, then at the faces around the table, her mother glowing with pride, her father proud but stern, cousins half-drunk and cheerful, Lucas tense but loyal. Adrian's smirk lingered, a dare written across his lips. I cleared my throat. "Marriage," I said slowly, "is built on two things, love, and loyalty. Without both, vows are just words. Promises become performance. And what looks whole, cracks." The room was silent. Clara's hand found my arm, light and controlling. "Daniel, that's beautiful," she whispered, trying to steer me back to her narrative. But I wasn't hers anymore. "I brought something to share," I said. My hand slipped into my pocket, pressing the remote I'd hidden there. The screen at the far end of the dining room flickered alive. A murmur rippled through the family. Clara's smile faltered, confusion bleeding into her eyes. Then the video began. The grainy image of our wedding night filled the room. Clara, in her silk dress. Me, tied down, laughing weakly at first, then stiff with confusion. And then, Adrian stepping into the frame. The air snapped like glass shattering. Gasps filled the room. A fork clattered against a plate. Clara's mother pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Her father surged forward in his chair, veins standing at his temples. "No," Clara hissed, rising to her feet. "Stop this. Daniel, stop it right now." She lunged for the remote, but I was faster, stepping back, letting the footage roll. Adrian leaned back, arms crossed, smirk sharpened. But when Clara's voice on the video cooed, "You'll always own my heart, Adrian," even his arrogance faltered. The smirk thinned, the smugness cracking under the weight of too many witnesses. "You bastard," Clara spat at me, her mask fully stripped, desperation in her eyes. "How could you? How could I?" I cut in, my voice calm, razor-edged. "No, Clara. How could you?" Her mother burst into tears, whispering her daughter's name like it was foreign. Her father stood, fists clenched, pointing at Adrian with a fury that could kill. "Get out of my house," he roared. Adrian raised his hands defensively, his smugness slipping fast. "Hey," she came to me. "Don't blame me for your son-in-law's bitterness." Lucas was on his feet now too, stepping between Clara's father and Adrian, keeping fists from flying but not shielding anyone from the truth. Clara's eyes darted wildly, from her weeping mother to her furious father to the frozen, damning image still flickering on the screen. "Please," she begged them, her voice breaking. "It's not what it looks like. I made a mistake, But no one was listening anymore. The chaos I'd unleashed had consumed the room, a storm tearing through the illusion she'd built so carefully. And me? I just stood there, still, the remote cooling in my palm, my heart pounding not from regret, but from release. For the first time since that night, I felt free. "Daniel, please." Clara's voice cracked, rising above the shouting in the room. Her eyes were wide, glassy, red-rimmed, her perfect bridal mask finally gone. She stumbled toward me, reaching for my arm like she could still pull me back into her illusion. I didn't move. Her mother sobbed openly, rocking in her chair, whispering, my daughter, as though she'd been handed a stranger instead of the girl she raised. Her father, face flushed with rage, spat words at Clara that cut sharper than anything I could have said. You've disgraced us. On your wedding night, in our house, shameful. Clara flinched like each word was a whip across her skin. No, please, Dad. It's not like that. Daniel doesn't understand, it was complicated. Complicated. The word twisted in my gut, bitter and pathetic. Adrian, cornered at last, straightened with that cocky smirk he thought could still shield him. You all need to calm down, he drawled. Clara and we have history. She settled for him, but everyone knows she belongs with me. The room erupted again. Her uncle cursed under his breath. Her aunt shook her head in disbelief. Clara's father lunged at Adrian, only to be held back by Lucas. Belongs with you? Clara shrieked, turning on him with venom now. You think this makes you look like some kind of hero? You've ruined me. Adrian's mask cracked. His face twisted, arrogance slipping into bitterness. No, Clara, you ruined yourself. Don't pin this on me. Their words flew like daggers, aimed at each other now, while the family around them recoiled, disgust thick in the air. The perfect bride and her reckless lover, stripped bare before the people they'd hoped to charm. Clara turned back to me, desperation leaking out of her. Daniel, please, stop this, shut it off, tell them it's not what it looks like. You know I didn't mean. I met her eyes. For a moment, I searched them, looking for the girl I grew up with, the girl who once promised me loyalty under the stars. All I saw was emptiness, an echo of who I thought she was. It's exactly what it looks like, I said quietly. Her lips trembled, her breath hitched, but I felt no pull toward her pain anymore. That cord had snapped. The shouting swirled around me, but I was already gone. I slipped the remote into my pocket and stepped back from the table. Each movement felt lighter, as though the chains I'd carried had fallen off piece by piece. Clara lunged toward me again, but Lucas caught her wrist, shaking his head. He didn't even have to say the words, she wasn't mine to catch anymore. I walked toward the door, the chaos behind me dimming with every step. Clara's cries followed me, desperate and breaking, tangled with Adrian's curses and her family's condemnation. But I didn't look back. I'd delivered the truth. I'd freed myself from the wreckage. And some bonds, once shattered, should never be mended. The door closed behind me with a soft click, but it sounded louder than any of the chaos inside. That house, their house, still echoed with Clara's cries, her father's rage, Adrian's sneering bravado. I walked down the driveway with nothing but the cool night air on my face, feeling like I was finally stepping out of a storm. Lucas was waiting by his car. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, his eyes steady, understanding. He opened the passenger side, and I slid in without a word. We drove in silence, the hum of the engine filling the spaces where my thoughts used to scream. For the first time since the wedding, I wasn't carrying the weight of secrets. The truth was out. The mask was gone. Clara's perfect image had shattered, and with it, the illusion I'd been clinging to for years. When Lucas finally spoke, his voice was calm, even. You did what you had to do. I nodded, staring out the window. I don't know if it makes me better, or worse. Daniel, he said, his grip firm on the wheel, it makes you free. That's better than either. The word, free, sat heavy in my chest, then slowly began to spread, filling the hollows left behind by betrayal. Free. I repeated it in my mind, tasting it, testing it. It didn't feel natural yet, but it felt right. Over the next few days, I moved out of the apartment Clara and I were supposed to share. Lucas helped me pack what little was mine, books, clothes, the guitar I never really played but always promised myself I would. Every item I carried out felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Clara didn't call. Not once. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Maybe she was too busy scrambling to salvage whatever remained of her reputation. Either way, her silence was its own answer. For the first time in years, I stopped defining myself by her orbit. I wasn't Clara's shadow, or Clara's loyal friend, or Clara's husband. I was just Daniel Hayes. And as frightening as that was, it was also exhilarating. Lucas kept me anchored. We'd sit late into the night, him nursing a beer, me holding a coffee mug like it might keep my hands steady. He'd remind me of things I'd forgotten I wanted, projects, travels, dreams I'd shelved because they didn't fit Clara's plans. "You've spent your whole life proving your loyalty," he said one night, leaning back in his chair. "Now prove something to yourself. That you can live without her. That you're more than what she left behind." The words hit deep. I didn't know what my future would look like, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like it could be mine. Not borrowed, not begged for, not built around someone else's ambitions. Mine. Clara's shadow was gone. And though the wound was still raw, I could finally see the path ahead, narrow, uncertain, but mine to walk. Breaking free didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. But maybe survival was the first step toward living again. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet, some might say, but after months of lies, whispers, and betrayals, silence felt like medicine. My phone buzzed constantly with unknown numbers, with messages that began in apology and ended in desperation. "Clara." At first, I read them. Words like, "I made a mistake," and, "we can fix this," stared back at me, stripped of the power they once held over me. Eventually, I stopped opening them. Her voice messages remained untouched, little red notifications I refused to clear. I imagined her crying into the receiver, begging me to understand, pleading for another chance. But she hadn't asked for me on our wedding night. She'd asked for him. And that truth, cold, unmovable, wasn't something even the most honeyed apology could rewrite. One evening, I sat alone on my balcony, the city humming beneath me. I had the recording in my pocket again, though not to use. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was just a reminder. Proof of the moment I stopped being hers. Proof of the night I finally saw her for who she was. The funny thing was, betrayal hadn't broken me. It freed me. For years, I'd been Clara's shadow, trailing after her light, convinced it was the only glow worth living in. But shadows disappear the moment they step into the sun. And that's what betrayal gave me, an unasked-for sunrise. I thought back to the vows she spoke at the altar, her hands trembling in mine, her smile strained. Lies, every last word. And yet, without those lies, I might never have found the truth about myself. I don't need Clara Moore. I don't need her approval, her presence, her validation. What I need is my own voice. My own choices. My own life. I pulled my phone from my pocket, stared at her name, lighting up the screen one last time. The call rang out, unanswered. I didn't block her. I didn't need to. Ignoring her wasn't about punishment anymore, it was about peace. The world was still uncertain. My future is unwritten. But for the first time, I didn't feel chained to someone else's story. I wasn't a groom. I wasn't a victim. I was Daniel Hayes. And my vow now was not to another person, but to myself. Never again would I give my loyalty to someone who saw it as weakness. Never again would I confuse love with chains. I whispered it into the night air, steady and sure, like a promise that finally belonged to me. I'm free.